Hello everyone, and welcome to On the Agenda. It's very great to be here, and I don't know how many people we have over there because in this fancy new platform we can't see many, but I'm excited to introduce you my co-host Tania Rak, who is joining us from Warsaw. I'm Kril joining from Milan, and today we are going to talk trends in public relations and advocacy. And what is it that expects us in the all fields of communications in the next year? So thank you so much for joining. I see that we have quite a few people, and Tania, welcome.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to everyone who is joining us today. So I think that it is important to discuss the trends since we are slowly approaching the end of the year, and it is better to come prepared for what 2026 will be when it comes to professional communications, expectations, and overall for people who are working in the fields that are similar to us to better understand the agenda that we are working with. So today we will try to draw the line between communication and advocacy. We will talk about the realities that we will have to work in 2026. We will discuss a few trends that we collectively identified with Julia, and we will give a little bonus plus that will help you to have a cheat sheet when you are planning your communications for next year. So, Julia, would you like to open the presentation? And we suggest you to go with us slide by slide and follow the agenda.
Yeah, usually we have some guests with us, but this time we decided that it's going to be us, and you're going to enjoy an hour of us sharing things from our expertise. So I'm gonna share my screen now, and we're gonna add. All right. So trends that will define PR and advocacy in 2026.
Yeah. So, to start with, I think that it is really important to ground all of us in the environment that we are working in. Because I think that the truth is that the context shapes really everything. So, what we are working with in 2026? First of all, guys, let's admit that we are operating in chaos, and information is becoming messier and messier and messier because, unfortunately, the times that we all are in are full of political turbulence, lots of instability, and we also have more data than ever, and somehow this data does not bring us clarity. In fact, it is creating way more informational buzz. We also have the algorithms, so unlikely how it was in the times of the classical media, this is what is shaping our narratives, this is what is shaping our informational space, and it also leads to the policymakers being overloaded with decisions, with information, with everyone who is trying to have a conversation with them. And all that happening while deepening the polarization, which is another issue. We have a huge decline of the classical media, which is being replaced by short form of content. There is a big debate on whether the classical tools of delivery of information are still relevant, and we will touch base on that later. And also, we are working with the AI technologies, which creates both greater opportunities for the content production, but also the threats when it comes to privacy and copyright and the competitive advantage. Can you please put on next slide, Hugo? And here we are. That's why we are here today, and that's why communication and advocacy should work fast. They often say that the best time to do something was yesterday, and the second best time is today. So timing is strategy, being right is not enough, and you must be first, you must be clear, you must be precise, you must be concise, because if you respond too late, you are not really communicating with your audience, you are just correcting the mistakes or the statements that other people in your niche, other players, those who are stronger, those who move faster, already made. And we need to understand that corrections, they barely win. So the campaigns that work today, they have several things in common. Next slide, please. The campaigns that work today, they have several things in common. As I mentioned before, you need to be concise, you need to be direct, and most importantly, this also should be built by people, which means that, of course, we are acting on behalf of certain institutions, certain brands in a way, because even if you are working in the NGO sector, it is still a brand that you are building. You, your colleagues, your founder, it is how you position yourself in the public space, it is what you are saying, it is what your values, what is your purpose, what's your mission. And here it is very important that people know people here, that you're not talking just to a Facebook page, you're not just answering the work email, but there are people who are showing up at the events. These are speakers. These are those who support the mission and the values of the brand. And I think that the center of this trend is moving from institutional voices, and it specifies on individual ones. That means that if you're working with your organization and you're at the position that requires communication on a daily basis, you need to find your authentic voice. That means that you need to understand who you are talking with, how you are talking to them, and also what are the audience who you are talking to. This is important because you cannot bring one and the same message to different audiences. So you need to identify and adjust their tone of voice. It does not matter which field you choose, but you need to be very concise, and you also need to cultivate your voice strategically. What means strategically? Strategically means that you need to address the thought leaders, you need to address the professionals, you need to address the practitioners, and those also become your brand, those become your voices. I can give one of the examples for beer innovations work. So one of the topics that we are working with is public health. And if you pay attention to how we organize our communication, lots of articles in our blog, on our website, is being written by the professionals, people who work in public health care, researchers, people who are working in the third sector as well, and the same goes with the events, which means that it's not like people have a perception of your brand just because they read something on the website as their organization. People need people. And you also need to understand that you are talking right from first party to the first party to your audience. Next slide, please.
Another trend that we are looking at in the upcoming year is that visual storytelling is becoming more and more powerful in uniting public opinion and making sure that people stand behind something. People's attention span has become very, very short. In the past couple of years, with the way how social media is evolving and everything, we are seeing that the public opinion is and public attention is becoming extremely limited in what amount of time they can give to the topic and in the amount of time and the amount of information they can perceive effectively. So we have a couple of examples, especially when it comes to difficult topics such as war in Ukraine, Syria, Sudan, Israel and Gaza. People are getting very tired of seeing bad, of seeing suffering, of seeing tragedy of seeing disruptions and of being forced to feel the very same emotions. Because when we look at the picture, when we look at the image, we see the emotion is the emotion that we feel, because visual storytelling is we tell the audience of what we want them to feel. If you are showing images of the war, you want people to feel sad and to feel compassion and to feel like you are suffering in order to take action and help others. And for this very reason, the difficult topics are slowly disappearing from the agenda. Why? Because also people have a limit of how long they can feel pain and they can feel suffering. So this is another thing that we as communications experts need to keep in mind is, while sometimes we have to push for the difficult topics to be on the agenda, we can't fight human emotion and human needs. And most of the time people go on social media, they go to read media in order to find some hope and to live again, you know. So for this reason, while the messages of war and suffering work in the beginning, they stop working slowly moving forward. And the next trend that reinforces the very first narrative is that everything will stay relevant, but only for a very short period of time. We don't watch any more reels that are longer than a couple of seconds. It's no longer 30 seconds that we watch it. We watch very quickly. If we don't like the first couple of words that we hear, the intonation, the energy of the people in the show, we move on, because the amount of information is so big that you just don't have the capacity to keep reading it, to keep watching. And for this very reason, both in public relations, both in general communications and in advocacy, in order to catch public attention, to be noticed, you have to think about what are the tools that you can use that communicate your key messages, which have to be very short and concise in the shortest period of time. So this could be visual summaries, this could be dashboards, it could be card briefs, this could be some short videos, that could be one-pagers, that could be just even a magazine full of images, because people most of the time want to see it, get the gist of it, and move on. Tania, if you have something else to add on this.
Yes, absolutely. As we were discussing before with you, there is still a demand for the classic solution and traditional way of delivering the documents, and maybe you could also touch base on that. But before we move to that, I literally witnessed how often journalists were screenshotting the dashboards instead of going for the full reports. And the reason is that informational space is oversaturated these days, and people literally have no time. Of course, if you are going for a deep investigation, and I'm speaking here from media perspective, as a journalist, you are doing the investigation, you need to dig into sources. But if you are just getting acquainted with the subject, if you are just getting acquainted with the organization, you won't have the time to go over and over all of that. The same applies to the material that you are trying to deliver on social media. Because usually people go on social media with delivering the message to the broader audiences. And of course, you need to understand your target, but other than that, you need to act from the perspective of whether I would scroll it through or not. Think about short form content when it comes to Reels and TikToks. And I think that these platforms, they actually kill our ability to concentrate. Because if something can be explained in 30 seconds, why would you spend more time around like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you can consume more content in a short amount of time. And whether we like it or not, this is the new reality that we need to get adjusted. And we need to remember the formula that we only need to deliver one message at the time. We do not mix it together. You do not want to put all the ideas that you have, does not matter how brilliant and amazing they are, in one video. The reason is people will get overstimulated. When people get overstimulated, you lose your message. When you lose your message, you lose the game of delivering your ideas and you lose your impact.
I love this one message at the time, and I will tell you more, Tanya, because people will get confused if we have more than one. And the next coming from this is, we all know, it's no news that TikTok is probably #1 platform where people are reaching all of the skyrocketing targets they can put in front of them. And the reality is that when you have a huge TikTok following, when you follow trends, when you stay interesting to the broader public, it opens more doors for you than your contact book, than your network that you've been curating for so long. A lot of times we see people who might have nothing to do with policy, advocacy, who are maybe more the voices of the people. They are reaching the rooms that those who have spent their lifetime in the advocacy and diplomacy world cannot reach. And I'm talking about people from TikTok, about, for example, how did Zoran Mamdani raise so much and get so much support? Because he was relevant, he was following trends, he was speaking the same language that young people, that the majority of people were speaking. He wasn't afraid to go and seem unserious. He wasn't afraid to go and seem to be too young or too, I don't know, whatever it is before Gen Z. He was trying to be himself, but he was also using the tools strategically in order to mobilize support. The Max Klimenko, the career leader guy, another amazing example of how you can reach the right rooms by being on social media, by being on top of mind of a lot of people, by being closer to people by using social media. And if we want to do advocacy that reaches a wide range of audience, we have to learn the best from Gen Z, because politics is becoming the category of influence media, and influencers are getting involved in politics, and politics-focused influencers are taking top charts. We've seen since Donald Trump took office in the United States, everything has become political. Young influencers, beginning influencers who talk about their work in diplomacy, who talk about their work in public affairs, in the European Union, in member states, in individual countries. They are starting to use social media as a tool to communicate their messages. We are seeing political parties and representatives of political parties using social media and trends and the working tools in order to communicate their messages, because you have to understand that where your audience is, that's where you have to be. And if we like it or not, but the audience is on social media. A lot of people start calling it influence media, and we have to start following some of the best lessons we can learn from the young generation on how to use these tools in order to reach our target goals. But it comes with its threats and comes with its problems. The next trend is not only about the good things, but about the things that are happening, and we have to be informed about them. Meaning disinformation campaigns that are being spread around with the help of artificial intelligence. they are becoming extremely popular. They are building trust of people because of their convincing messages, and the speed and the scale of those campaigns are unmatched for a regular human. And we have to be informed about these campaigns, and we have to be able to identify them in order to also, first of all, in order to prevent our target audiences from believing them blindly, meaning educating our target audience, meaning trying to raise awareness even before the campaign has started. And secondly, by following social media and following what is being discussed and what kind of information is shared, you can understand who is running campaign at the time. For example, in the months of September, we've seen a huge slash and rise of campaign on the conflict in the Middle East, because there was UN week, there was the resolution on genocide in Gaza, there were multiple statements expected from world leaders. The campaign was insane. Now I'm seeing, for example, a public campaign in support of various policymakers, depending on the situation in various countries. Sometimes you can't even understand that it is an intentional, well-curated campaign happening, because you just see it as a funny content. But it can also bring negative results, and it can bring people who are elected into power because they have been engaging in AI disinformation campaigns. And an example is the elections in Romania. The examples are the ones that I mentioned before. So we have to be really aware of how to identify them and how to build trust despite of them, meaning using disclaimers, meaning communicating that this video was made using AI technology for subtitles, etc. But the more transparent we are, the more we'll be able to build trust. Tania, if you have some things to add here.
I think that AI is giving lots of possibilities for us, but I agree with you on privacy. The other day, I was actually talking to ChatGPT and asking how ChatGPT sees the threats when it comes to privacy. And ChatGPT itself told me that we need to take care about our digital traces. And for those who are interested, I actually wrote together, and I find it's interesting. The strategy with ChatGPT on how to take care of the digital trace that you make in different platforms, how to erase it, and how exactly you can take care of the privacy of being online, at which cost it comes. And of course, ChatGPT recommended me to use only ChatGPT platform, being absolutely unbiased, and said that other platforms impose more of danger. But on a serious note, I think that AI is the tool that we will unavoidably be using in future. It's either we will have to use it directly, or we will be on the receiving side because some of our colleagues or even our opponents will be using that. And in that or another way, we will be getting the information that will be the synthesis of human and machine learning. The question is how we will be operating with that. I think it always should be a cooperation because it is a tool in our hands, but I think that it is very important not to lose your creative spark and your critical thinking, and always to understand that you need to fact check, verify, and only then to put in writing and to pitch.
100%. Now, another trend that comes maybe not so much from PR, but from advocacy world and working, especially in the European Union, is that reputation management should start way before the crisis hits. The moment you start your campaign, the moment you start planning your campaign, you should start thinking about your reputation, because in Brussels, once you lose your reputation, you lose. Full stop. Rules are in fashion, and we have to oblige by the transparency rules, codes of ethics, and procedures. And the reason why is that everybody right now living in such a polarized world on the option or in the version of the cancel culture is running after your reputation, because the moment they can hit on your credibility, it means that your messages will no longer reach the ears and the eyes of those people who you need to target. And the first and foremost, specifically in Brussels, it is the transparency rules. There have been many crises that have built the foundation for it, such as Qatar Gate, Huawei Gate, and whatever other gates were there. But the moment you bring in negative actors who try to influence EU decision-making rules by thinking that they are above and beyond of the rules, by using some of the unethical or unlawful mechanisms of influencing public agenda, then everybody is put under the test the moment they start their advocacy campaign, and every single moment as they continue it, their trust and credibility is put to the test. So for that reason, being registered in the transparency register, being following the codes of ethics, and the way how you communicate with policymakers, all of this comes together into are you a good player or not? And even if you you play by the rule book, even if you follow all of the procedures, if anything gives way to an impression that you might not be following the procedure, the media will be right up your tail, and they will write an article, they will investigate, and they will make it look like you are not compliant, which will still damage your reputation in pretty much the same format as if you were the one breaking the rules. So if you start working on any advocacy work, especially in the European Union, these are the things you have to start thinking even before you launch your campaign. Tania, I'm passing the ball to you.
Okay, guys. Hello again. Not gonna lie, that was very, very stressful. Yet here we are.
Are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. I'm just reading a message from one of our viewers. I disagree. AI exists for years. OpenAI just made it sexy. AI will make masses more stupid and smart people will rise. Well, that's a good point of view.
Absolutely. Did you cover the reputational risks?
Yes.
Well, I would like to make a little comment here. Maybe you could turn one slide back. I think
Okay.
that it is absolutely applicable to the world of communications as well, the world of media. And if you remember how it all was started in early 2000s, the profession of a PR person was quite often called an image maker. And those people were troubleshooters, and quite often these people were working with people who always were in public. I'm not speaking only about celebrities, but also people in businesses, politicians, policymakers. And I also think that it is quite important to take care about how you appear in a public space overall, preventively. Because I do not think that any person will be reliable enough to work in case if the only word that you have been associated, you or your organization or the product or the idea that you are working with, the only word is scandal. No one wants to work with people who are scandalous unless they just create the buzz. But if you want to work on their own impact, this is something that you need to avoid at all costs. And also, what we need to remember is that, again, people are dealing with people, and people talk. Whether we want it or not, people are talking. When you leave the room, people talk. When you're in the room, people talk. The question is what people will talk. And of course, you cannot control everything that will be said when you're not in the room. But at least you can do everything that is in your power to make this narrative be indecent, to stand for your ideas, and to be very consistent with what you are delivering into this world. And also, I think, not even like I think, I pretty much witnessed that for many times, that in case if someone is not reliable enough, it's not like most of the organizations, so people will come and tell you directly, like, hey, I don't like you, we're not working. They will ignore you, they will not answer your messages, or you will be blacklisted, but it's not like there will be a huge sign on the door of the conference or the European Parliament, this person cannot enter unless you're like an extremist. But you will not be invited, you will be avoided, and if your reputation crisis will hit somewhat other level, media will also write about that. That recently happened with one of my colleagues. There was a tiny communicational mistake on their side, and trust me, all the Brussels knew. And that person knew only through third parties. So that's how it works. So take care of yourself and do not do stupid things. That would be my advice. I'm not sure whether it is trendy, but I think that to have some sanity is just necessary, like 24/7, 365.
100%.
Okay, so now as I'm back and hopefully no technology will kick me out, Yulia, can you please mute yourself because I think we have some echo. Let's talk about short-term advocacy and what is the difference between short-term impact and long-term impact. Because I think that there is a rise of the short-term advocacy, and it is natural that lots of organizations want to have a quick win. So let's say we are talking about a 1-month campaign, 3-month campaign. We have 2 weeks of media pressure. We are sending out a bunch of press releases. We are getting a few publications, and that's pretty much it. In short term, it can work out and it serves its purpose. So if we need to push something very quickly for a very specific purpose, that's fine. This is understandable. And also, we need quick metrics sometimes. And also, what I see is that certain stakeholders respond to urgency. Short-term form of advocacy can do that, but ideally speaking, we are talking about forming the long-term impact. So, like, think about all the last-minute campaigns, thousands of posts and hundreds of events, but they have very little influence on the global scale. Why? Because the narrative was shaped without thinking of how it can be scalable. And here we are coming to the next point, which is the consistency. Because if you want mm, to build a long-term impact, you need to be precise in what you are talking about. You do not want to build something that people will talk about for 1 month and then they will forget. It makes sense to plan your moves so that they are coming in waves. So what you need to think about, what is your long-term shot? And it can be something big. It can be some change in legislation. It can be advocating for some bigger cause. But it is the same as they say that you need to eat the elephant in pieces. So the elephant is your big vision that can be achieved in a year, in 2 years, in the best case scenario. And then you cut this elephant in pieces, and that can be divided into your short-term campaigns. So campaign one is creating one wave, like tsunami, right? So one wave is reaching out these stakeholders. The second wave is scaling because you already created visibility. And the third wave, the final form, will bring you to the impact that you would like to have. And That's why consistency is important, because here you are forming like a big chain. I would label it in a way that firstly you shape the narrative that you want to work with, then you set up the message. What is the key message of your communication? Who you should align with? Who are you delivering this message to? Are you sure that your message is not very long? What is the data that is supporting your message? What are the visual references? What is the media that is friendly and is eager to work with you? Who is the community that you are building around? Do you already have this community? What do you need to build this community? Then, if you're working with policymakers, who are they? What is their stance? How do you identify whether they are positive or negative? Do you want to reach out to those who are not eager to change their mind, or you rather working with those who are your allies by default? What are the follow-ups? And most organizations join somewhere in the middle, quite often at the media stage, and by then the narrative is already formed. So the earlier you or your organization is joining the process, then the higher is your chance to be successful. And if you are in this field long enough, you will also understand that these results will come not from your spontaneity, as much as great your ideas can be, but it will come only from your discipline.
Yeah, I also I've seen quite a few times when a company or some people working on a specific issue would want to have this very short-term campaigns in order to influence the legislation or influence the public perception around the legislation. And they don't understand that 9 times out of 10, this will backfire. And instead of just staying quiet and letting the law die without any attention, they would raise attention around the issue, they would spark the discussion, and then the policymakers would be forced to actually put the law in place, which is a counterproductive from the intention in the first place. So sometimes if you stay in the area long enough and you just follow the file, or you keep engaging with people for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the length of the regulatory file. But I mean, also we are talking about European Union, where every file takes many years. Then you are informed enough to just don't wake the lion or the tiger and just like let him sleep, let it happen, let it be. Yeah, it's just like give the problem a room to breathe, and you have no idea how quickly it can get solved if you don't touch it. It's just 5 cents. Well, I guess, Tanya, this in addition to your message.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you need to combine the approach, because you need to have the consistency, but it does not mean that you should not look up to the things that other professionals in your niche are creating, and who is succeeding, who is making the mistakes, because you can, of course, you can learn from your experience, and your path is your path. But if you can take some lessons from those who try simultaneously, that will only benefit your long-term journey. um, and yeah, of course, right, just go try and you will find out what works the best for your specific purpose, for your specific goals.
Yeah. Another thing that we really treasure, and I think both Tanya and I are the good representation of it, and I see it happening more and more, are the collaborations. And the variety of collaborations that can be happening, and all of them are meant to drive the agenda forward, to raise publicity, to influence change. And we are talking not only about just regular collaboration of Yulia and Tanya, we are talking about the collaborations of maybe businesses and NGOs, policymakers and advocates, of governments and tech companies. Some of these very unusual pairings are exactly the ones that will drive the agenda forward. Like, for example, I'm seeing a lot of times lately governments partnering with AI companies to provide some of the solutions for people, which benefits the people, benefits the government and the people who are behind the idea, and it also pushes for better regulatory freedom for tech companies, for example, in this case. The alliances, very strategically curated alliances, are the tool to to double your resources or triple your resources, because your partner will have X amount resources of yours, either 1x or 2x or 3x. But you might bring with the ideas, or you might bring to the table some of the coalitions that you're having that your partner can access to. And by together combining and these unusual pairings, like I saw a year ago or two, the United 24 did a campaign with Uber to provide rides for people who, actually I can't recall, but I think it was like for people who were coming back from the army, or to create these pairings in order to do fundraising for the war, or to help raise awareness about a social issue, be it about uh, the women's rights, be it about the environment, be it about the innovation and technology, because businesses are the ones with ideas, innovation, and the audience. And some of the NGOs or policymakers are the ones with the power to drive the change forward and to bring it to to the table of negotiations and then implement it into a policy or the law. And these coalitions also can have different shape. It can be a coalition of stakeholders who are coming together with their voices in order to take action on a certain cause, even if it's not an unusual pairing, but it's just a coalition of companies, a coalition of NGOs, a coalition of policymakers. But the more voices you have advocating for one issue or the other, the more chances you have for a successful outcome. And Tanya, if you have anything to add from this, because actually in your work, you are working with a network of partners and coalitions.
I think that it is extremely important to have these cooperations and collaborations. We at We Are Innovation are hosting the monthly meetups where our partners can exchange their ideas so that we understand who's working on what. And that also gives a room to highlight the achievements of other people and spark more cooperation within the network. This is one thing. Another thing is that I also see in my field how different sectors cooperate, especially when it comes to innovations, because it is a very broad topic that we are operating with. And if we are talking about the recent developments, because you mentioned that unusual pairings win, right? And governments and businesses and tech unite. When you're saying that, the example that I am thinking about and that is coming to my mind is the cooperation of Estonia and Ukraine. When they did the cooperation on digital public services, you can see these are absolutely different states, but the innovation partnership worked and it created a real impact, especially in such tough times as there are in Ukraine right now. It created a very different framework because it all makes the reach, it makes the agility, the credibility, the best practices from different business, from different tech companies, the companies that are working on user experience, the companies that are working on the needs when it comes to all the bureaucracy and solutions that customers on their end need. And I find it really fascinating. And overall, like, if you can have an ally, if you can have a like-minded person, that's already something. And later, I think that you can always talk, you can always elaborate how exactly you can find the angle that will be applicable for the work both of you and your potential partner. the more people you bring, the more impact you are being able to create. And I'm very people centric in that sense.
Yeah. And we have some bonus points because why not?
Yeah, because we can. So, as we were discussing before, the AI and digitalization and tools. So, we need to understand that AI so far is not replacing humans when it comes to communications and advocacy, but it definitely becomes our huge assistant. That's why we need to combine how we approach the communication systems. And that means that uh, we need to work on strategy, we need to work on creativity, and we can collab on that, all while being supported by data, which means that today we can use the AI for different content variations. We can use that for the tracking, we can use that for segmentation, we can use it for pattern recognition. But we also need to stay very transparent in what we do, respect the copyright, and we need to follow the structure. So for me, I'm trying to follow the certain framework uh, when it comes to structure. So you pick up the story, then you are identifying the underlying issue in a system that you are working with or trying to change or trying to make impact in. Then you are identifying what would be the solution, and long term, what would be the public benefit of finding that. This formula, I think, is kind of timeless and it's quite logical. But when it comes to the AI, you can train your algorithm and you can pick different AI tools. And it is not limited only to content creation, though I think that most of the people are relying on that when it comes to the use of the AI, either using the Mid Journey or ChatGPT to file our reports, or I don't know, creating the scripts for the videos or whatever. But it goes beyond. So, for instance, yesterday I had a very interesting work call with a company that is designing the solutions when it comes to predictions of the political risks in Europe. Right now, they are focusing on Brussels, but they're planning to expand. And I find it really fascinating because we tested the platform, and the platform allows us to, first of all, monitor the events. So it is helpful in case if you are working with a specific issue, you can see what is happening. Are there any protests? Are there any strikes? Are there any roundtables? What is happening? Then it also allows you to track media. What media is writing about, who they are writing, whether it is in a negative light, whether it is in a positive light, what are the outcomes, how many platforms are writing about that. And in case if you're working on a similar subject, you understand, okay, this media is super critical about my topic, maybe it's not the time to reach them out. Or maybe, on the contrary, I will invite them to my event and I will talk to journalists and I will try to persuade them about the opposite. The same goes with actually politicians. There are profiles on these platforms, and they are divided by political parties and uh, the topics that they are also working with. And by that, you can also get the estimation, and the AI tool is giving you the percentage of the approach of a particular person towards a particular topic. And you can check that out later. Let's say that you're thinking about the solution and you already identified your story and you saw the issue and you fact checked how deep is the issue, and you already talked to politicians and you did the parsing of information of these people through the AI. Now you're working on the solution. I'm fully standing for using the human potential and human creativity when it comes to identifying the solutions. However, you can always train your algorithm of the AI on helping you to go deeper on that. When I work with my AI, I usually put it 4 times, 5 times minimum for it to go deeper and deeper and deeper and do research for me, because I identify what I would like to do. For example, I'm planning the campaign And I'm thinking, okay, I'm dividing this campaign for the media part, for the events part, for the long-term impact, for work with organizations that are friendly towards the topic. Now, what would be my steps? So that I'm going on a call with these people and I'm saying, hey, I'm working on this topic, can you help me? But how can they help me? What would be the pros of working with me for them? How we can make the most of impact? And what would be the tools for that? And I think that AI can help you to brainstorm. So you just sit and write down the ideas. AI is not perfect. You need to guide it. But in this guidance, it is the algorithms, it is the data that is being collected from someone's experience that already failed to succeed it. And you can, again, you can check out the sources and ask even your chat GPT or ChatGPT, give me the examples when this approach succeeded or when it's failed. I did it quite a few times, and the results were super interesting because it even provided me with metrics. And then after that, you can also check out the public benefit that you can get, and you can also ask your AI how exactly, in terms of measurable metrics, it can be seen. So when we're using the data-driven storytelling, when we are using that for our work, when we are using that for our strategy, I think that it's very important to combine all the resources that are available for us and probably were not available for the professionals that were working before us a generation or two ago. And yeah, remember that AI that is making mistakes, it is also being trained by humans. So train your AI and fact check the product of the work of your colleagues and other stakeholders, because if their AI is lying and cheating, probably there was a gap with a human impact in the very beginning that did not identify, fact check, and gave wrong prompts to the AI.
Yes, 100%. You know, in Ukrainian, we have this phrase, trust but check. And I think this is exactly what we have to do with AI. We have to trust that it can help us, but we have to check everything that comes from AI ourselves, because the human and the person is still an oversight board, so to speak, of AI technology. And if AI makes a mistake and you release this work to your clients, to the public, to the media with this mistake, the blame will still come on the human, and it just shows your ignorance to fact check, to double check, to just review your own work. And yeah, I'm really loving the example with the solutions that you presented, Tania. But again, if we are looking from AI technology that is like monitoring accounts, monitoring positions, we still have to be double checking to make sure that it's actually in fact correct, because AI is learning from people. So if people put out incorrect information out in the web, let's say AI is learning from the media articles, etc., and if that information has been misleading, then the AI will put together the same misleading information. I was recently listening to the presentation of somebody who was talking about how public affairs companies are using AI in their stakeholder mapping. And in fact, a lot of companies are not using it because they do need to know people, and they do need to be very confident that they're not going to shit the bed when they approach people on one topic or the other. So I think we're still in that kind of like buffer zone when we do start using the technology, but we do have to be sure that we can rely on the information the technology provides. I guess this was it from our end. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm now gonna close the presentation and go back to the main screen, because I think we have a few really interesting questions that were there from the audience, which I'm seeing A good example is chat control that was going outside the window if activists weren't pushing against it. Most of the member states were against it already, and now it's on every single presidency program. I guess it comes to, don't push the horses in one way or the other. Thank you for talking about ethics. It's such an underrated topic in all of our industries, and we need to be vocal about it. Yes, thank you. Taking a step back to one of your previous points on new trends regarding content and social media, from your experience and insight, how do you balance short-form, fast-consuming content with in-depth messaging? Is there a danger of oversimplification? Is it enough to break it down into multiple content pieces or formats or something else? Tania, do you want to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we often discuss in at We Are Innovation, because this year we are trying to take the course for simplifying our content so that we are reaching out new audiences who are not necessarily familiar with the topics that we are working with. And we also were thinking about the potential danger that it imposes, because as the organization, we are also we want to be taken seriously. And how we balance it out, we can post a funny video, we can post a funny reel, we can post a laughable piece of content. Like recently we post a meme about COP, girl you are so hot you could be the topic for COP 30, with a reference to the climate activism and discussions. However, it does not mean that you need to become a clown on social media, and you need to balance it with the deliverables in your content. So if you have the report, publish your report, publish the link to your report. Those who are interested, they will read it. If you think that it will be too long to read, break that in pieces, put the most important parts of it, and publish it with adjustment to the platforms. For now, I think that Instagram and TikTok, they are mostly functioning on TikTok videos or carousels of pictures when it comes to TikTok, and it functions on Reels and again carousels when it comes to Instagram. Then we have Facebook. I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook, but again, each platform serves its purpose. From our experience, our Facebook is the least engaged platform. And one of the most viral is actually LinkedIn and Instagram. So you need to adjust your message according to the platform. Darian, you probably know that because you also work with that on the daily basis. But for LinkedIn, we need longer posts. They can be more insightful. Again, we need to change the tone of voice. I would not post the meme about COP on LinkedIn, while Instagram format allows that. We need to understand which type of the audience we are engaging with. We need to understand what is their age. We need to understand the level of the familiarity. Again, if we are talking about simply marketing perspective and social media, communications is a part of a bigger marketing. For that purpose, we need to create the hook. And if the hook becomes a meme from which people will just go to your page and they follow and they will check out more serious content, then why not to do that? But I do not think that there is a danger of oversimplification if you work smart on your strategy. So for me, this is the matter of the overall message that you want to deliver with the content that you post and your positioning as a brand, as an organization, or if we're speaking individually, of your personal brand.
Yeah, I also think that both types have ability to live and coexist together. It really depends on what your goals are. Like for example, you can put together a long form report and send it to the policymakers or some of the companies, or you can just use it in order to show that you are an expert on the topic and that you spend time researching and that's are the topics that you work on, and these are the results of your work, because a lot of times report is the result of some kind of research or in-depth analysis, because you really need to show what is happening, be it the geopolitical risks or be it the polling, or just analyzing the policy on a certain issue. But at the same time, you do want to stay relevant and use short form content and have fun, depending if that's kind of your type of communication. But we are seeing now big consulting firms having some of their team members recording videos, publishing them not only on TikTok but also on LinkedIn, and at the same time the next day presenting the results of the long form report. The media has a short attention span, and disinformation tends to spread more rapidly than truth. How can we seek to recapture the narrative or reverse opinions established on mistruths when the 24 hours news cycle moves so quickly? It's an excellent question. I love it. So the best way how to combat disinformation, in my opinion, is to use two things. It's to use data and facts, and to use the trusted, reliable media. So if we refer to trusted journalists and we supply them with data, with credible sources, then at least you can put out a counter narrative online, because at the end of the day, I don't believe that all media is bad media and that all media is just going into disinformation. I do believe that and I've seen in the evidence that there are people that still dig deeper, that try to share accurate facts, find accurate sources, find accurate testimonials. What we are asked all the time is to provide data. We need to provide visual data. We need to provide, even if it's photos, if it's data reports, if it's any kind of video evidence, is probably the best in order to counter the narrative. Tanya, I think you have something else to add.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I have a remark for the question, because the question is how we can reverse opinions. Why do we want to reverse opinions? I think that in modern world, we almost never reverse the opinions. What we are doing, we need to outcompete these opinions, because it's like putting the smoke, back to the bottle. Because if you want to be an effective communicator, yes, misinformation happen, disinformation happen, and I think these are like two different things that we also need to separate. Whether it was intentional as misinformation, or it was unintentional as misinformation, or it was intentional as disinformation. And if so, I would do three things. The first thing that you want to do, you need to set the first frame, ideally speaking. If for some reason that already happened, that someone already set the tone, you can either spend the rest of the news cycle, the information span, while correcting the information that already got to the public space. But what you want to do, you want to lead it. And that's why overall preventively you need to understand where this can happen. And if you're working with sensitive topics, you more or less can identify what are the pain points, and in your communication strategy you need to take that into account. And when you make something of the public attention, think about what are the underlying stories for that, because that you will at least protect yourself. However, the next point is that when we see some lies on social media, the way why it becomes viral, it is either that someone has a high level of credibility and they already have their reputation, and people go yeah, this person was right about so many statements, or we have the credit of trust, so why would they lie? And yeah, this person can lie, but your audience does not know that. And the second thing is, if you analyze how news travel across the internet, we can identify several pillars that they stand on. Rice is usually emotional, rice is usually visual, and rice is quite shareable. And even if you are the truest person in the room and your statements are absolutely decent and you're an amazing human being, you can be just boring. And that means that you need to compress the message to the formats that travel. You need to have clear visuals, you need to have one sentence explanations, and you also need to have the stories that people will want to repeat. And after that, you also need to take into account that often, unless it's absolutely hideously scandalous, people, before believing some news that they saw, they are waiting for the response. And this is where mistakes often happen, because you think like, okay, but that's obviously the lies, and I know what my statement is, and my stakeholders know what my statement is, and I know the values, so why should I justify myself? But unfortunately, in a very saturated attention span, these narratives can just stick. And what you can do, you need to give your version before the crowd believes the noise. That's why in the beginning we were talking that communication needs to work very fast these days, because yes, the attention span is short. There is the 24 news cycle, and it was like that before. It did not change with the rise of social media. It's just that we are oversaturated and overstimulated with other content that is falling on us. But I would say that here the real strategy is not to chase every falsehood. We need to focus on creating a very consistent presence that is credible, and we need to monitor what is happening in public space and give very quick answers. Yulia, you're on mute of something. I don't know whether Yulia can unmute us, but I will ask just in case whether there are any other questions. You can write in the chat.
Sorry, I got frozen on the screen for a second. I'll just add one little thing to this is it also depends if you really need to counter the narrative because depending on the goal, a lot of times policymakers, for example, decision makers, they already have all the accurate information and they just the news live in one world and the decision making lives in another world and it's just a matter of your goals and your needs in a way. Anyways, I think we've passed an hour, so I think it's time to wrap up. And thank you to everyone for joining and for sharing your super interesting questions. We are going to upload this in any case, but thank you for spending this hour with us. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Tania, for co-hosting this amazing discussion.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yulia, for an amazing conversation, and thanks for the questions and comments. I really enjoyed that. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Have a good evening.